You're listening to The Hustle with Russell Scott.
Hugh Hefeweisen, welcome to the program.
My pleasure, Russell.
For the audience who probably won't know who you are, tell me about yourself, and why should I hire Hugh Hefeweisen?
Well, I've got a long history in publishing as well as beer producing. I've been working in the industry in Canada for over 20 years. Most recently, my latest venture is called Scandal. We've been doing an organic lager and ale for the last few months on the market. That's where we're going.
That's why I contacted you. What happened is that I went into a liquor store, and I'm done with all the chem beers, chemical beers. The Molson Canadian, Budweisers. These are mass-produced shit beers, if I may.
You may.
So I asked the guy, do you have any organic beer? Not thinking that they had any such product. He pointed out your product. I tried it, and quite honestly, I thought it was the best beer I had ever had. So I contacted you. So tell me about why you decided to go with an organic product versus a typical chemical product.
Well, the Scandal Brewing philosophy kind of revolves around anti-shit beer, if you will, program. So we do want, we've been researching and developing through some of my prior endeavors. I've got a bankroll, shall we say, to invest in these things. And we've been looking into the organic philosophy for about 20 years, as I say. When we first went to make organic beer, you couldn't actually buy organic barley in Canada. So we've actually started to revolutionize how the industry itself operates in Canada. So to have your crops certified by the Organic Crop Certification and USDA, it takes 7 years of purity of cultivating the soil and ensuring that there's no contaminants from prior owners of the land. So that was the first order of business, was getting the regulators to change up the programming so we could buy in Canada. But yeah, ever since I inherited and purchased the brewery up in northern British Columbia, it sits on a natural spring water. So everything from the water to the ingredients for Scandal, we try to make sure has clarity, purity, and we also have the highest quality standard in North America, which is the ISO 9001. We're one of the only breweries in North America that has that certification, and to not utilize that with the same sense of purity and quality throughout the ingredients would be ridiculous. So do our best to bring in the highest quality organic ingredients to match our water and make the best beer we can.
You said USDA.
Yep.
Get that right?
Yep.
Why is it a United States regulator here in Canada?
The standards are actually higher, and the research that we did, the USDA is, in terms of consumer mindsets, is one of the highest and most respected trademarks that you can get in that field. And it's global, right? So we've had global brands and global partners. So in terms of being recognized outside of Canada, the USDA has a lot more clout. And we've used the Canadian certifiers, but their standards and their impact on the market just isn't quite what it should be. And that goes back to the point that I made earlier about the crops themselves. It's the regulators and the industry in Canada has a long way to go.
Can beer be organic? I mean, it is a cooked product, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a bit of a superficial misnomer. Like originally, like back in, I think the 4th century or something, they have hieroglyphics of people drinking beer, right? All beer was organic, but today, all the grass that's fed, the locally raised beef that you get, all that stuff has contaminants. It's just become the norm in crop growing. I read it earlier. I think it's 80% of corn contains GMOs today. So it's really tough to get, as the industry gets pushed for more and more supply and demand issues get raised. I think they cut more corners. They do what they can to protect their crops and get more yield. So tough to get that across to the general public, because in layman's terms, isn't all beer organic is kind of some of the immediate feedback we do get.
Do you follow the coveted Bavarian purity law?
Absolutely. The Scandal Ale and Lager are both extremely follow the Reisdorf laws.
Which is?
Strictly making your beer with barley, yeast, hops, and water.
Okay. So how do you actually know for sure that the ingredients that you're bringing in are organic? What's the oversight there?
Well, that's why we like the organic crop certification makes sure that these facilities are
Like, sorry to cut you off, Hugh, but are they grown here in British Columbia, or are you importing them?
Some of it is from here. It depends on supplies, but the Holler 2 hops are actually flown in. Sometimes the grains are from Alberta, but it depends. Like, if you follow the market, the hops and grains market, they fluctuate globally. So, but everything is certified. We can't put the USDA mark on it without it being certified.
And none of the ingredients are GMO, genetically modified.
No, that's why we use the USDA, because they have a rule that states the use of genetically engineered organisms and their products are prohibited in any form or any stage in the organic production, processing, or handling of those goods.
You know, one of the things I've noticed with some of the, or let's call them earthier products when it comes to beer, they tend to be very heavy. You know, these stout beers. The lager, not so much the ale, but the lager is like extremely clean, crisp, and light. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It's one of the purest beers that I've ever tasted.
If you had the finances of a big brewery, of, say, a Molson's or a Labatt, what would you do with that power? Would you eliminate all the non-organic? What would you do if you're the CEO of Molson's?
Oh, my goodness. First of all, I'd fire my entire marketing staff. No, I'm not. That's a tough question.
They're playing on that whole Canadian, I am Canadian thing pretty hard. It seems to work.
Yeah, I think the reality of the situation is, again, we have to get back to the everyday consumer, just not looking at labels. It's almost the same in the music industry and then in the publishing world, where I know a thing or two is knowing who's publishing these things. For instance, knowing that certain brands are actually sold by them here. There's a big battle over the Corona brand. You know, in terms of sales, I think the Corona probably dwarfs the Molson Canadian. And that's where these guys are making their money. Is even Labatt's is tied to Budweiser. And as you say, they all have these images of local and Canadian, whereas they're controlled by people that are operating their businesses from 30,000 miles away, not just 30,000 feet above.
Would you consider the Scandal Brewery to be a microbrewery?
Absolutely. It's everything that we do with Scandal is handcrafted. My brewmaster, Suddly Brew Right, has the German background. That there's less than 20 of these ticketed brewmasters in North America, and that terminology of handcrafted beer comes straight from him. He's great.
So, what is a microbrewery versus, I guess, a macrobrewery?
A micro, as I said, it's in Canada and even in North America, it varies from country to country, but in terms of volume and stuff like that. But I love the terminology of Suddly, just that handcrafted. If it's handcrafted and batch produced, and the batches, you know, aren't, for us, it would be impossible to replicate what we do at the Scandal Brewery in another brewery. So that kind of attitude and that kind of philosophy that goes into our beer is I think the difference. Whereas, you know, some of these major global brands are producing beer in China, they're producing beer all over the world in 5 million hectoliter, which is 1,000-liter batches, which is just huge.
You know, the one thing that we can't get away from is this pasteurization process. Do you have any opinions on that? Because when you pasteurize the beer, you really kind of kill many of the things that are inside.
Absolutely. I always, you know, in my travels in researching beer and development through Germany and all these places that I've seen, Amsterdam, I learned that the best beer is the regionally local, closest beer you can find. So I always try to get the best, freshest local draft beer where I can, and we do sell that, and that is unpasteurized in the keg. So, you know, it's got a lower shelf life, but it's definitely worth it to get your hands on a fresh, right off the tap beer when you can. The pasteurizer is like a tunnel. You wouldn't be able to stick the keg through, right? I'd imagine some people do, but to my knowledge, that's why the shelf life is lower. They got to cycle kegs a lot quicker.
That's amazing. So if a guy really wants to get away from that, you just buy kegs.
Yeah,
that's great. You know, one of the things I'm also interested in is how big are these batches?
For each batch of lager or Scandal ale,
yeah,
we're looking at about 5,000 gallons.
Is this the same as you would have for a big beer, or are these smaller batches?
That's relatively big for what we do, but we do service the entire province.
So how many cases or barrels do you produce?
It's a few thousand cases, that's for sure.
You've rolled out this product basically at the start of summer. How's it going? Is the beer selling well?
Yeah, the first batch actually sold out, which is great to hear.
I bought half of that, I think.
We hired an artist who's a local artist, all hand drawn, all hand painted. We did a few different things with the packaging as we printed on the inside of the box. There's a card game, a drinking game per se, that comes with the packaging. So I think there's a little bit of novelty that's drawn some people in, but the scarcity of the product is actually working in our favor. Where can I get it now is the question, right?
Yeah, people have asked me, actually. You can find them. I've seen them in the government liquor stores, but it seems like more and more people are carrying it. I'll tell you about the game. My 5-year-old son plays this game with me.
You don't drink with him, though, right?
Well, I'm drinking, but he's playing the game with me. So,
you take his drinks.
That's right. Listen, straight up, man, the game is really fun. It's a really simple game, and it has all these... Well, some of these cards are great. Like, you've got the whistleblower card, the cop who looks like he's assaulting the perp, insider trading, the busted card. I mean, where'd you come up with the idea of the whole Scandal brand anyway? This is right up the alley of the West Coast truth.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it sort of formulated over time. We worked on that game for over a year and a half. I had a few partners that I collaborated with on the development, and one day we just had a breakthrough. In the research and development, we found out that there's a lot of trademarks involving board games in general. So we originally wanted to do sort of a Clue style game, but we shifted away from that pretty quickly when we saw all the legal stuff and just decided to come up with something that was original, was easy to play, easy to distribute, easy to create the actual cards themselves, and catchy, right? Something that you could play over and over again. I remember back in my school days playing around the cafeteria, you'd play asshole or whatever, and they're just quick little games. So, within a few hands, you got a winner, and it helps to tell the story of the scandal, just really develops what we're trying to do as a brewery and get that philosophy of questioning the consumer's mindset and getting them to challenge these other bigger brands, to put it on the forefront. What are you all about? What, is it just a beer in a can, or where is it made? All these questions.
It's not in a can at all, though.
Exactly, but that's what I mean.
Stubby bottle, yeah.
Getting people to question what's out there, and what is Canadian history. That's why we put it in a stubby bottle per se as well, to show that we have a bit of history, we have a bit of nostalgia for the industry and what we do. So we're not afraid to put it in a non-conventional package and not be a part of the bottle union, as they say, the bottle pool.
Hugh in the brewery with the pipe wrench. So you've been saying we a lot. Who are the players behind Scandal Brewing? I certainly know who you are. And you've mentioned Suddly Brew Right.
Well, yeah, Suddly's my right-hand man. I dream it, he brews it. In the industry, we know it's important to have endorsements. A very political game in BC, so we have some political ties in terms of support. We have some reporters. We have a taster girl in Pamela Amberson, who's she's new to the company. She's a student struggling to pay her tuition, but everyone needs a good intern. And speaking of interns, we have Monica Brewinski, who's a local reporter, and she's always coming by for tasting and press releases when we do little events at the brewery. So,
and I'm not going to ask you how she got her job.
Please don't.
Or the tastings, for that matter. Audrey Hopburn.
Yeah, she used to be in big beer commercials, but she's seen the error in her ways and is working with the little guy, the local guy now. So she's around my arm at most of the events. She kind of resents Pamela Amberson for what she's trying to encroach on, but there's two arms on you, as we all know. Natalie Porterman is the local senator. Beer production is governed pretty closely, so we need to have good relationships with government. They provide enough scandal content for us as well. I hired Barley Sheen, who is a hot ad exec coming up. He reminds me of the Mad Men characters. A little bit of retro attitude, a cigar smoker. He's a little bit of a old school internet advertising kind of guy, but sometimes these guys hit home runs, and that's what I think we've done with barley in some of our campaigns.
But he seems unpredictable.
He's quite unpredictable. But we've got him settled down for now.
Right. Well, just keep him sedated.
Yes. Keep him sipping on a brew. We got Micro Jackson, the local entertainer. Grew up as a child performer. He's quite outspoken. And again, just another great character for our Scandal content, so to speak.
He probably plays the Scandal game with kids, too.
No comment.
Yeah.
And then John Bon Jovi, really important for us and some of our branding to endorse the people that are the end consumer and do get out in the community on the weekend, play the hockey, and then go for a beer afterwards. So John Blonde's got a whole line of restaurants that he runs. So getting the beer right into the hand of the consumer and being a good spokesperson for the brand that has been and he's a character himself. He's a little bit rambunctious, so it's good to have some of these curveballs thrown at you on a day-to-day when you come into the office. Keeps you on your toes and keeps things exciting.
Well, I recommend, these aren't made-up people. I recommend to anyone, go onto YouTube, type in Scandal Brewing, and there are some interviews up there with your brewmaster and John Bon Jovi.
Yeah, and they all have their own Facebook pages, so any of those characters you can't find on the old Facebook there.
You're a baller, Hugh.
Let me get my drinking jacket on.
You're right. How much does it cost to start up a microbrewery? Let's say I wanted to get one going for myself.
Well, I think that's the competition for someone that's running an organic brewery is the everyday brewer that can just go and buy the ingredient and make it himself. I think that's why we have so much novelty and emphasis on packaging, because it's what separates us from just being a U-brew, and they're two very different fields. But it would take a lot of money to do something commercial. Like, I was involved in the first Canadian commercial organic project as well, and I can tell you, to get to where we are today and the marketing that's necessary to communicate these factors to the market, it is quite expensive.
The fact that people couldn't purchase organic barley. What the heck is that about? Why not?
I think that's what we were talking about, is the supply and demand. They're bending over backwards to keep their product fresh. On the other hand, I understand it. I understand why they do those things, but as you say, it's a choice not to support it and to go the other direction and support the local guys, support and lobby to get organic people some support. It is a financial strain on these people that are trying to brew beer healthily or even have crops and farms that are organic. As I said, it takes 7 years. Imagine not being able to produce a yield for 7 years. What are you going to do to feed your family?
So you feel that supporting organic will ultimately lower the price for the consumer?
Absolutely, and make it more available. If I didn't have to order stuff in from overseas, from Europe or from down south, obviously it would make the shipping cost lower, which, again, we're talking about all these conscious consumerism items. Well, guess what? Shipping is one of the biggest ones that people forget about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to get these big global brands from Timbuktu to your door, guess how much gas and fuel gets burned and goes into the environment? That's got to be a concern on these people. And if you look at some of the top beers in the market, they're not local, right? They're not even Canadian.
No.
That really irks me, is that in a time where there's a recession, in a time where you're losing jobs week after week to the U.S. or to overseas, why is it so hard to make that click that what you buy at the store every day makes a difference in what the future holds for your children and your neighbors?
You vote with your dollar.
Absolutely. I highly agree.
Listen, as far as I'm concerned, I think you're a marketing genius. We've met personally. You're not that bright, but as far as the marketing goes, you certainly are. Listen, the card game is great. The packaging is brilliant. What is, in your opinion, what is the importance of branding? You've failed in certain endeavors, right? You're
not personally in things that I've stabbed at, but I have taken on ventures, and this is a rebranded venture, to say the least. And number one, it has to be something that you like and you love and you care about. I think that's the number one thing that Hugh brings to the table. I never want to produce or support something that I don't myself love and want to have in my hand. I think that's number one. Number two is, I think you have to have something that you can almost guarantee people are going to talk about, because you can't rely on people like yourself, Russell, reaching out to things that they find interesting. You have to rely on your everyday consumer wanting to talk about it the next day. And what that means, number 3, is it has to be memorable. It has to be something that leaves that impression. We all know how many things get bombarded at our temporal regions every day. So to have that the next day, especially after a couple of beers the night before, you have to remember what it was and some kind of story to tell at the office or at school or wherever it happens to be is a big part of it. That's where I think you start to grow is, did you see this, or I was drinking that? Those little stories or those little notes on the social media is really what pushes brands forward these days.
You have a tasting event on September 26th, which is a Wednesday, and that's, I can't pronounce it. Tell me about the event.
Well, as I said earlier, we not only support the local factor for drinking, as I said, I get behind John Bon Jovi in every venture that he throws our way.
And responsibly so, right? And
responsibly so. And also, I love the art world. That's really something that, is part of the Scandal philosophy. Right from Ryan Jones's artwork, The Human Burger, he created a package that is destined to draw in that alternative crowd that loves the support of local art. Because I think it's just as important as supporting the local beer. I think the philosophy has to be applicable in all genres if it's a true philosophy, right? Mm-hmm. So what we have is like local art programs and also local fashion designers. So I work with a girl that does Haiku Studios in Kitsilano. She does all organic clothes, and it's all locally designed and sold. She's got a really cool boutique that actually opens up onto 4th Avenue, I believe, with a sort of garage door. She does shows every so often with local artists, again, sharing that same philosophy that I have. And she's gotten a contract to do a media event at one of the coolest restaurants, I think, in town. It's called Fraiche. I'm not French. I do know how to French.
Le
Fraiche. So that's on top of the British properties in West Vancouver, overlooks the beautiful night skyline. It's got a great view. The chef up there is amazing. And so we're going to do a tasting up there to support her and get the brand really rock that in that market as well.
By the way, the price point is low. Because I think it's about $13, maybe less, for a 6-pack of the bottled Scandal lager.
Yeah, I don't think we're pushing the limit on the pricing roof for our product, but I think understanding the market and being applicable to the fact of knowing what kind of time zone we're in for the economy and providing a great product at a great price has always been a part of our program as well.
Well, how is it that you're able to offer the product cheaper than other competitors?
I don't think we're too far off. We do have a little bit of an economy of scale, but we don't make a fortune on every case, so I don't think we're gouging people. So that's number one. I think a lot of people do overprice their product. We got a pretty good streamlined sales team out in the field all over the province. I think we're pretty good at our margins, so I think that's the answer there.
The website?
scandalbrewing.ca.
And you can even download the game in a PDF format, print it off if you wanted to, and play it, I believe.
Yeah, it's. I wanted to have the card game be a significant, like almost real poker card size card. So to get the whole set into each box was just an impossibility, and it does encourage repeat purchases. So you have to buy 2 of each flavor to have a full set. But yeah, you can go online, see all the cards, and download a full set as well. And one of our in-store promotions that we have coming up has a collectible little mug with a bottle opener that's reflective of our logo, as well as a full complete poker set with the 52 cards and an actual container box. So look out for that in the next month as well.
Can we give one of those away?
Absolutely. I'd love to have some of your listeners play the game, and the whole idea was to have the collectible mug sort of sitting there as you played and passing the beers around, and there's always an opener within arm's reach, right?
Well, I think we give a few of these away, people can't not talk about the game. People can't not talk about how good the beer is. And let's get these non-organic guys out of town.
I highly agree.
Would you ever consider expanding with the Scandal and perhaps adding expansion packs to the game?
The whole concept that I came up with was to just keep it fresh. And each batch, because it's organic, it takes on a new flavor as the seasons progress. So each batch is going to be slightly different, and that's what I like about it. You're never going to get that same beer. It's always going to be a new sort of Scandal adventure every time you buy it, but always going to be delicious and high quality. And I find what happens at the retail space is when you start to play the seasonal game, they start to play the seasonal game back. So in terms of the fight, the war for that shelf space that we're talking of, it just jeopardizes what we're trying to do as a company. If the stores don't support it, they'll trade out whatever new flavor you have for another one. So I think we're trying to keep it fresh with the new political push that's all the voting that's going to be going on in the next 6 months. I think we're going to come out with a version of the game that sort of centers around that kind of scandal. So right now the game is sort of centered around business scandals because we want it to reflect all the stuff that's happening with the big banks and the scandals of the economy. But the next logical thing for us will be into the political spectrum and starting to put some light in a fun way on all the different things that happen there with voter fraud. And there's just a whole field of stuff that we can get into.
So the game will continue to change throughout the seasons and...
Absolutely.
Wow.
I'd like to keep the packaging fresh too. Right now it's a craft paper color, so I think that speaks to what the beer is itself. As I said, that handcrafted mentality style. But in the spring, I'd love to have it in a nice basket pack. I think you'll see seasonal packaging and timely sort of marketing, and that's what I'm going to use to sort of carry the market for us.
So we could potentially see a Gordon Campbell or Mayor Gregor Robertson card, eh?
I think I like the idea of the characters building and developing, but in terms of some likeness being featured in how the card play game happens, this might happen. Some of the little nuances for some of the scandals per se, or whatever we can come up with in terms of the titles of all the cards that you mentioned earlier. Just keeping it fresh so that anyone that's got the card game and has seen it before is opening their eyes again to something new.
Are there any more local events happening outside of what we've already discussed?
Yeah, we support a local art gallery called Positive Negative, and right now they've got a show on right now called Odd. So it suits the Scandal branding. It's new works by Alison Woodward, Dan Leo, and Bennett Slater, and it's running until September 16th, every day, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday from 1 to 4.
Okay, so we're going to run the promotion and give away this ultimate Scandal Brewing swag package to one or maybe two of our audience members. The beer is the best part of it all. Hugh Hefeweisen, thank you very much for being on the program today.
It's been fun, Russell. Thank you so much for having me.